What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast, the official podcast of MetalNexus.net. I am your host, Daniel Terry, and with me, as always, is Jonathan Beatty. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. Any episode that I don't have to do all the heavy lifting and the editing and everything, it's always a welcome to, I guess, a vacation of sorts.
Well, you still had to do the editing. I made that very difficult for you.
It wasn't so bad. I mean, that's kind of the fun thing is, like, you know, there's one thing, it kind of gets a little redundant when it's like, okay, you and or I did the interview, then we're doing these intros, and then I'm editing the conversation, and then editing the outros, putting it all together. By the time, like, an episode comes out, like, yeah, I still listen to it just to make sure, like, as a training tool of, like, oh, I could have done this better. But by the time everyone's hearing it, I am so burnt out on the actual episode that getting, you know, some of these from Dan where it's like the process is fun because I get to hear a conversation where I have no idea where it's going. It basically is like exactly what you all are going to get, except for the fact that I will learn, or I have learned sometimes where it's like, oh, this comes back later on, so I'm going to keep that in, but this doesn't come back. It just kind of goes nowhere, and let's go ahead and clean that up a little bit. And it's just a nice, fun way to kind of be really engaged in something. And there was actually some things in this that I missed the first pass-through I did, just kind of leveling everything, that I was like, oh, that was kind of a cool little side tangent you guys went on, especially the Zayo stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I don't think we even introduced our guest.
Not at all.
I talked to John Marino of the band Circleback. He does their growly, screamy vocals, and that's the only vocals that you're going to hear on the Circleback album, which makes me very happy. This band's just awesome. I've been obsessed with them for a couple of weeks now since their album dropped. It dropped the same day that the Tool album dropped.
The what?
And let's see. The Tool album is...
What is this Tool record you speak of?
Right, yeah, I know, right? I don't even remember what it's called. Like Fear Inoculum or some crap. You know, it's like an hour and a half long. I didn't have time to listen to it. Instead, I decided to listen to Circleback, which was like, I don't know, like 20-something minutes long, and it was straight ahead hardcore and super to the point. And that made me extremely happy. So,
see, now I'm going to do something that, like, my wife always does when she says shit like that, where I'm going, hey, let's watch a movie. And she goes, oh, it's like an hour and a half. But let's go ahead and binge watch like a 12-episode season at 30 minutes each. And it's like, you realize we could have watched several movies at this point.
Yeah, totally. Well, I just, you know, I listened to the first few minutes of the Tool album, and I was like, oh, this is just such a waste of my time. And it's not even that I think that it's bad necessarily. It's just that, you know, anybody that knows me knows how much crap I have to listen to every week. Like, in order to keep all the planets going in a circle, you know, as far as my podcast go and stuff. So whenever it's just like, I'm just going to listen to this just because, it's got to be something that's to the point and grabs my attention immediately. The Tool record did not do that. I took one look at the runtime and I was like, I can't. I don't have time for this. So instead I proceeded to listen to the Circleback record like 4 times in a row in the same amount of time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I think I've mentioned this a couple of times. I just get so I just feel like it's hard to get excited about new music at times, like without having to listen to it objectively, to try to come up with some questions, or to, in rare instances, you know, when doing discography discussion with you guys, it kind of has now sort of become a job. It's like, you know, booking concerts, I can't go to shows without thinking about the financials and the numbers and everything at play at a show, and it's kind of ruined it for me. I mean, the irony, you know, I did check out this record and it was really good, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I just got the new Refused record in our email. I think I've gotten 2 songs into that, and then I was like, I'm going to listen to a podcast instead. Because I think there's something to be said more about finding a connection with the person and hearing the stories that inspire the record, inspire these songs. And I think that's something that you did really interestingly with this chat with John, is instead of just kind of going like, yeah, so this record and I like it and blah, 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 let's break it down track by track and kind of give like an audio commentary on it. And I think that was kind of a refreshing take on it, and I think will be something that will be valuable for fans of the band long term, because, you know, like you said, this isn't a band that a lot of people necessarily know of at this point. Yeah, they were on As the Story Grows, and you have been pumping them religiously, no pun intended, on your socials, on discography discussion and so forth. And it's one of those things that I think this is going to be a thing where maybe the album isn't necessarily it's not a shower, it's a grower. And I think maybe this will be something that the fans will habitually keep finding and keep being able to get answers to something about the record that they maybe were thinking or didn't know.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, and I think it seemed like such a generic thing to do. Like just telling somebody, like, yeah, I think we're just going to take the album track by track. And like the first thing another podcaster will say to me is, oh, so you have nothing to talk to this dude about. And it might have seemed that way, but John, first of all, is a super charismatic dude. And so he came in with a story to tell anyway, which helped immensely. And he had already done a pretty intense podcast on, the band forming and all of the background information and all that. But it really wasn't, I didn't want to retread that ground, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I wanted to really get into it because whenever I first checked out the record, it wasn't for a podcast and it was literally just like, oh, hey, my buddy Brian likes this and a few of my other friends like it too. I'll go ahead and check it out. And then, I listened to it a few times and the record really grabbed me, which we'll get into in the interview, that it kind of grabbed me in a way that I wasn't expecting, because on the surface, it just seems like another hardcore record. Like what's so special about this? And for me, it was just that it was super energetic and it kind of brought me back to a time when I first got into hardcore. It's not a throwback band by any means. Like they've got like that modern heaviness to them and that modern energy and everything. And, the records actually don't sound like garbage anymore. Like even if they're recorded on a smaller budget, So like I got all that. Like it still blasts the speakers whenever I listen to it. So like you said, John, it's like people could hear the Circleback record a year from now and be like, oh wow, this is really cool. And then if they're Googling it, they're going to find this podcast, and then they get the deep dive too.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's as good of a segue as any to get into your conversation with John from Circleback, and we will circle back and talk to you after this.
Yeah, right. I have the pleasure this evening of speaking with John Marino of Circleback, vocalist for Circleback. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Dan. Thank you for having me on tonight. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be here.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. It goes without saying, if you've looked at my Facebook history, that I have been absolutely digging your record Terminus. And I'm just gonna kind of fanboy about it for a couple of minutes, if that's okay. Maybe not minutes, but
please do.
Yeah.
I really want you to do this.
You're just gonna sit back in a chair with some lemonade and just,
I already have my feet kicked up, so you're good. Just go ahead.
Perfect. So yeah, the first time I listened to Terminus, it was a nice day out. Actually, it was a Saturday morning, and I wasn't even supposed to be at work that day, but I took on an extra shift anyway, and I build garage doors for a living, and so it's a lot of exhausting physical work, and I was just like, I always listen to music whenever I work, but it had been a kind of a long time since I listened to anything that was like truly hardcore, as all my handles online and everything, it's all discuss metal. So I listened to a lot of like really, really shred-tastic stuff. I had the night before had listened to the As the Story Grows episode that you were on, talking about the band and the record. And I was like, you know what? I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to pull the trigger, and I'm going to, listen to the record. And it definitely, like, I think I listened to it about 4 or 5 times, because it's not a terribly long record. Yeah, I'm looking at U-Tool, who their record was like an hour and a half long. Came out the same day, no less.
Exactly.
I definitely wasn't in the mood to listen to that, and I was just blown away, man, with just a heavy, sincere, chaotic, dissonant hardcore, which is just kind of a feeling that I really don't think I've had since I was like 19.
And I appreciate you saying that, because that's one of the things that we wanted to do with this album, is to really get those emotions out there and have people that are, 15 years old and just getting into it, and the guys, in their 40s and 50s who have been around for a long time, they would get it as well and still feel the same passion. So I appreciate you saying that, and it like drummed up some of those feelings that you may have had, whenever you had like a hardcore heyday. I know you're, super metal right now, but when you had the opportunity to really, because it was a weird time. I mean, in the 90s, when I really started, there was a lot of those bands that really invoked that passion out of people. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with Circle Back, is to really, have that emotional connection with people. And I'm glad you picked up on that. I really appreciate that.
Totally. And it was the energy too that really caught me off guard, because like there's a lot of heavy bands out there, right? I mean, anybody can pick up guitar and be heavy, I think it takes a little bit more than that, because I used to try to categorize what I thought extremity in music was. And what really came down to it for me wasn't crunch necessarily. I mean, that does help, but you have to pair it with actual energy, and it's commendable that you guys have as much energy as you do, considering where you guys are at in life, which is a really nice way of saying you're old without saying that you're old.
That's exactly right. You are 100% correct on that. And that's the thing, and it's funny whenever we play shows, because we'll play with bands that, these are kids, like college-age kids, and, I'm running around like a nut, screaming in people's faces, and they're just looking at me like, what is this old guy doing? Like, what is his deal? Like, he's bringing it harder than we are, and it's hilarious. It's one of those things that, the one thing with Circle Back now, especially for me, because, I'm older than the rest of the guys in the band, is I just don't know if this is going to be my last record. So why not put all of my attention and all of my effort and all of the passion and all of the energy, like you were saying, into this record, because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. So you better give it your best right now. And that's one of the things, I hope to share with other people, like pretend like this is your last ditch effort and make sure that you do it the best you can do. So that's the energy of Terminus, and that's the energy of this record. And I, again, appreciate you really picking up on that.
Well, let's jump into the record a little bit. One of the things that I wanted to do was to not rehash the conversation that you had with Brian Patton on As the Story Grows, which is an episode that you guys should all go check out, which John gives the history of Circle Back, how it came to be, just there's a lot of cool stories and stuff in there that I don't want to just go in and repeat. It's all there for you guys to listen to. So, I'll provide some kind of link whenever we post this episode so you guys can go back and check that out. But what I wanted to dig into a little bit was the not a little bit, the whole thing, because like I said, it's only 7 songs, and I just wanted to start and kind of look lyrically at the songs, or just get any kind of just any kind of interesting tidbits about each track, like what it's about, and how you came to want to write a song about that. So I guess we'll just start with track 1, Terminus. And by the way, I want to thank you a million times over, because whenever I first popped it on, I was like, oh, this is just going to be an intro track. And then after a few seconds, I was like, no, okay, it's an actual song. Because I was so expecting you guys to do the hardcore thing, to come in, do, and then just be like, circle back. And I was like, if he does that, I'm turning it off.
What I can tell you is on our very first album, at Circle Back, we basically took a riff and we just made a, oh God, I'm completely drawing a blank right now. We took a Suicidal Tendencies, we just ripped a Suicidal Tendencies song and did CB over it. So it was like the typical, like, ridiculous hardcore intro song. So we did do that, but that was on our very first album. But for Terminus, it was a straight up, kind of butt beater right in the very beginning. But the good thing about this song is, it opens up with me saying, this is the end. And it just so happened to be the end of a current era in my life. So, being in the business world for, years and years and years, and with one company in particular for a very long time, I was unfortunately placed into a situation where I had to take a voluntary severance because they were closing the location I was at. So all those emotions and all those feelings and like the uncertainty that you go through when something is so familiar and then it kind of goes away overnight, those were like all the, I tried to pen the whole song around those feelings and what I went through and how I was feeling, because like short of like the people I was working with at the time, no one from the outside really knew how it felt to be put in that position, unless, you were kind of like specifically placed in that, exact situation. So I wanted to get it down. I wanted to get it on paper, and that's how Terminus came to be. So, whether this specific situation happened to the listener or not, I would hope that any time that you had a major life change, in whatever way, this is something you can go back and maybe take a listen to and kind of, gain some hope from it, or at least experience the emotions that I went through and feel that you're kind of not alone in this when something major kind of goes down. So that was Terminus itself.
Okay. That's cool. I definitely got that off of it because I had dealt with a pretty serious situation, very similar situation myself last year, like in 2018, where I was working a job that was it's kind of funny too, because whenever I look back at it now, I realize like how miserable I actually was doing that work. But it was very soul sucking. But I remember, that whole getting called into an office and having a conversation, and then you're literally getting on the phone. I'm getting on the phone with my wife being like, well, we're going to have to figure something out, and, yeah, that song definitely, I definitely got that vibe, especially just with the strong statement, this is the end. Yeah, no, I definitely felt that in the song, and I think that's really what attracted me once I started getting into the lyrics. I mean, I got into the music first, but then, digging into it, whenever I got home and reading the lyrics, I was like, oh, okay. And I also had that insight from Brian's podcast of, kind of that you'd come from the business world, which I found quite relatable, as I did a lot of like put on my nice clothes and go into the office for years and years and years.
Right, and that's exactly where I'm at right now. So
yeah, right, literally.
Moving from one era to the next, I'm still in the same world, which is definitely interesting, but cool at the same time. Hey, this money funds, a lot of cool things that we can do with Circle Back, and I'm appreciative of having the means to be able to afford to, like, we're going to press our own vinyl, so have the means to be able to do that and not have to rely on anybody. It's really, really cool. It's, just one of life's things. And, health insurance is also really good too for my wife. So
right. No doubt.
And, it's just what you have to do when you get older. So at least you're understanding and can appreciate that as well.
Well, and how cool is that too? If you look back to whenever, you played in bands, cause I can only assume you've probably played in bands since you were very young, and, there's only one of them that I know of off the top of my head, but the funny thing is that, like, I remember back then, like, we'd be at band practice and my buddy's amp would like blow up or something, like, and just never having the funds to pull it all together. And it's got to be kind of cool now looking back on it, that if you have band related expenses, or if you have, if you have to buy new microphones or new a new PA system for a practice space, or here's something, even having a space to practice, that's got to be really cool kind of later in life, even though I know we tend to look back at the times when we were younger as like the best times to be doing this kind of stuff.
When I was younger, I mean, it was so much fun, just because it was new and it was fresh and there was a lot of things going on. But, like, you really had to rely on a lot of people, which is completely fine. But, and we're not, some, bunch of rich guys at all.
Well, no, yeah.
But it's nice to know that if we need to buy something, or if we need to, like get someone's head replaced or even fixed for that matter, we can do without, asking our family for money or anything like that, or
starting a GoFundMe
or so that's at least nice about it. But it's definitely different than it was when I was younger, but I still appreciate it just as much as I did back then.
Well, let's move on to the next track, which is Dare to Defy.
Okay. So a little insight on this. Our guitar player, Nathan, is like super into like every show that is on the CW.
Oh, yeah.
So, they have their like little Dare to Defy, like their little like,
yeah.
So I told him one day, I was like, listen, man, I'm going to write a song and it's going to be called Dare to Defy. And it just became like a running joke. And then sure enough, this album came around, I'm totally going to do it. So again, not to make it completely cheesy or about the Arrow or whatever, shows that are on there. I kind of took the lyrics in a direction where it's you being who you are in the face of resistance. So defy, all the negativity and everything that's coming against you in your life, because sometimes we allow that to defeat ourselves. But if you stay positive, you have the right attitude, and, you rely on the people that, that will be there for you consistently, you can beat those odds. You can, you can defy the odds. I mean, it's part of the lyrics in the song. So I wrote Dare to Defy to be kind of like almost like a triumph over, negativity and bad things that come, in your life. And it's something that I think everyone can relate to. We all have problems. We all have things going on every day. And it's just a song that, you could put on and be like, okay, I can get through this no matter what's going down. This is something that'll help me kind of get through it. And if it's something that can help you personally get through it, then, this makes this album completely worth it. I would appreciate that more than anything else if one of these songs that I wrote just helps somebody get through a dark day. And, if that's something that can help you, I think that's probably makes it most worthwhile for me.
Totally, and that's what I love about hardcore, like as a genre, is that sense of positivity and overcoming, and that's one of the things that really reached out to me on this song was that, especially, and I keep having to bring age into it, but like especially at my age, like when something bad or terrible happens, it can still even to this day be very hard to not just totally immerse yourself in it, immerse yourself in the misery of the situation.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think and I think sometimes whenever we reach out to other people, sometimes they can be toxic as well, into that situation. And so the lyrics that stood out to me the most on this song was just the truth can be found deep inside. Look in your heart, find the strength from within, find the truth from within. Like, it's one of those, like, that's all there inside of you. At the end of the day, no matter what happens to you, you are still who you are.
And that's exactly right. And that's what I want people to really, dive into when it comes to this song in particular is, the truth does come from within, and you really have to make a conscious decision with yourself to help yourself overcome these problems, because you can't let things defeat you. Like you said, it's very easy for people to succumb to just life and things that are going on, and like, I'll never be able to get out of this. You can get out of it. You can do it, but it's got to start with you. And if it starts with you, you can defy the odds.
Totally. No, that was really cool too. I know, and I know I'm talking just as much as you are on each of these tracks, but
no, it's completely fine. No. Listen, I appreciate it. Yeah, and I really like your take on this, because it's good for me to see that there's somebody out there that has had the opportunity so far, because this album just came out on the 30th of August.
Yeah.
Who's had the opportunity to kind of digest the lyrics and, listen to the album a few times through and really, get the meaning out of it. So it's good to hear it kind of being talked back at me in a way.
Sure.
So, I can have an understanding that there are other people out there getting the same message that I'm trying to get across. So that's good.
Well, what I love about it is that the record is so brief and only 7 tracks. I can listen to the album like 4 times in the time it takes me to install one garage door. So there's that.
Which is fantastic. And that's one of the things I wanted to do too, because, I'm not going to try to write like a 13 or 14 song, like ridiculous album, because I really think that in this day and age, and it differs because a lot of people are going to hear me say this and be like, no, I listen to albums straight through.
Yeah, right.
I don't listen to albums straight through. I'll listen to like a little bit of each song, and if it's awesome, okay, I'll keep going. But I want to give the listener just enough that you're not like annoyed by Circle Back. So by the 7th song, you're like, okay, this is awesome. I want more. I can't wait till they drop a new album. Not just put a bunch of filler songs at the end and they're like, okay, well, 70% of this album was awesome, but the rest was crap. What were they doing there? I'd rather just give you the hits, just have all the hits at one time, and then, just be super psyched about it and excited for, a potential new record down the road.
Right. Yeah. And no, I mean, I appreciated that about it too, because, with my other podcasts and what I do on there is I'll listen to a whole band's discography in like a week. And then at the end of the week, I'll do a podcast about it. And, that can get really rough. Like whenever you have to listen to like 10 Gorefest albums or, like something like that.
That would be torture for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think I have the capability to sit down and just do that, or like the wherewithal to even bring that to the table. But that's cool. I'm glad you do that. And I'm sure there's like, tons of people that like really are into that and they'll digest that, but that is just 100% not for me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's entertaining to listen to, but it's not entertaining to do. Is what I've found.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. Because I'm putting myself in your shoes and just like spending a week like listening to these albums, back to back to back, and then trying to break them down and then talk about them. That's really tough to do, and I really give you a lot of credit for what you do. That's really cool, and I hope like everybody checks that podcast out and this one as well, because it seems like you put a lot of time and effort into what you do, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with it. It is equally fun, but also equally work, and I never thought it would be that way. But
right.
But moving on, so we've got track 3, which is Covalent Bonds. Did I say that right? Yes.
You did. You did say it right. Yeah, and so Covalent Bonds is really about, it's kind of like the more like generic, like hardcore friendly type song, has a little bit of sing-along in there. But I really wrote this song about the other guys in the band, because really like, I wouldn't be able to do this without them, because first off, I have zero musical talent, and I've mentioned this before, and I will continue to mention this. I really rely on them for so much. And, the camaraderie that we have as a group right now is just unbelievable. I mean, we are really close-knit. We have the opportunity to joke around with each other and be as loose, and we can be ourselves. And so by writing the song itself, kind of just like expresses my gratitude to everybody else in the band and all the contributions that they make to the band itself. And it's just a really fun song, and it's heavy, and there's cool breakdowns, and it's like has a little bit of like the personality of each member in the song. It's in the actual song itself. So taking that all together and kind of sandwiching that into one really, really cool song is just why it's one of my favorite songs on the record.
I call this the Hug Your Bros in the Pit song.
That's it. Yeah, and it's like, just let's have a good time. Let's not take everything so serious, because really like a lot of the content on this album is really super deep. And, if you know anything about life, there are times where you have to step away and just kind of regroup. So Covalent Bonds, the song itself, is kind of like one of those where, okay, we got really, really heavy with, lyrical content. Now let's step away, take a couple breaths and just enjoy life for a little bit. Then we'll dive back into it. So, I love Covalent Bonds. I love playing it live, and I love, people like getting into it. We just played the song recently, and since the album came out, a lot of people were into it and were singing along, especially on the Truth, Friendship, Blood part. It was really cool. A lot of people, got into it, and, hopefully it's one of those, have fun, sing along, hug your friends, just exactly what you just said.
Totally. You get a beer in one hand on each side of the 3 guys. They're all hugging. Yeah. That's
it. And that's all that really matters,
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things I thought was cool was that you've got Dare to Defy, which is a super positive song in itself, and something that I was talking about with that song was how sometimes whenever you're down in your misery, you can be exposed to toxic people that will just help you stay in your misery, and they may not necessarily be doing it on purpose, but maybe they don't know what to say or or whatever. But like, and what's great about Covalent Bonds coming in after that song is that it shows that you can, even though Dare to Defy, it's like it's all within you. I think it was cool that Covalent Bonds kind of stresses the importance of having like real friendships. Like not just people that you know or people that you spend time with, but people that actually get you and actually care about what's best for you.
And that's exactly right, because we all have tons of acquaintances, but it's really the true friends that, will be there for you no matter what is going on. And having, a solid group of individuals surrounding you in whatever capacity, works for you is really what's going to help you, kind of get through life. And it's one of the things that I've noticed throughout the years that, friends do come and go, and it's unfortunate. Like I can recall like 4 or 5 like really, really good friends I had when I was younger that are, nowhere to be found these days. And it's not a matter of just, like we stopped being friends. It's just, life kind of swept us away. And it's, so you kind of have to adjust your circle as you go along in life. And that's one of the things that, your bonds, can change, but, as long as you have, a solid group of people around you, or at least a support system, you'll be good to go going forward.
Agreed. Well, speaking of going forward, let's jump into Bounty Hunter, which I discovered after reading the lyrics was not about Boba Fett, which I was a tad disappointed with.
So whenever we went into the studio and then we sent the tracks over to Jamie King to have him mix and master, he sent them back and he put Dog the Bounty Hunter for this song. And really, so that was hilarious first. And then Nathan, our guitar player, like, him and I are like really deep into Star Wars. So he thought I was going to write about Boba Fett, but I didn't. So Bounty Hunter itself is really about what we were talking about before when we were discussing covalent bonds, some of the, toxic influences and people that can come across in your life. And sometimes people gravitate to those toxic people or toxic ways of thinking or, different organizations or whatever. Bounty Hunter is like kind of, being that person in the shadows to kind of combat that type of behavior and those type of people, because a lot of those teachings and then a lot of those types of people, will really negatively affect not only you, but the people you're around for, as long as you want that to go on. So I really wanted to call out that type of behavior and those type of people and, and just show that you can go out there and you can make a difference and you can actually, change the mindset of people. So that's kind of what Bounty Hunter was about.
Well, and what was interesting to me about it was that, you had, and I hadn't brought this up before, but, I was actually a big fan of yours years ago. I didn't actually even know it, but I had a CD that you were in a band called Outcry several years ago. It's a while back now, but I was
going to say more than several years ago.
It's been a minute. Let's just throw it on there.
That's true. Yeah. Outcry was what, 98, 99?
99. Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's what the CD says. Yeah. What was funny is with Outcry, that was a very more like religious based band, and what was interesting about a song like Bounty Hunter is the theme that I got from the old Outcry record was more of like a theme of like obedience, and it was very scriptural. It was very it was a Christian hardcore band from 1999. You know what I mean? So like it was all of that stuff. And what I thought was really interesting about a song like Bounty Hunter is I kind of feel like, as far as that stuff goes, that a lot of the people, the line that stuck out to me the most was, "Your closed mind will be your end." And I think, whenever people discuss, or throw out closed-mindedness, a lot of the time there's a little bit of some of the most closed-minded people I know are religious people, which it's not strictly religious people. I mean, sometimes it's people that are super straight edge, or people that are super vegan,
right?
Or anybody that has anybody that has their own convictions that they feel like vomiting those convictions out on somebody else. And what I found interesting about Bounty Hunter was it's funny knowing your history of singing for a Christian hardcore band, but then we come back, we're in 2019, and like this is kind of where you're at now. And I don't know. I kind of found that refreshing because I have kind of a similar mindset, like with those years specifically in mind, like 1999 versus 2019.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. And you know, what we did in Outcry still has an impact on a lot of people to this day. You know, I have people that come up to me all the time and, you know, my gosh, I loved Outcry. I love what you guys did. You know, it really, you know, got me into X, Y, and Z, whatever they're doing to this day. And that's really, really cool. So I'll never disparage any of that. For me personally, going throughout life, yeah, I've been kind of screwed over by a lot of people that kind of had that mindset and mentality. There are a lot of good people out there that, you know, follow a certain, you know, religious base or anything like that. So, I still have good friends to this day that are, you know, super faithful and all that. But for me, you know, I want to be able to recognize that, but at the same time, also be able to call out whenever there's just garbage and nonsense and like a weird herd mentality with a lot of those groups and things like that. So I've seen it kind of materialize over the years. And, you know, I'm at a point now where I feel that I can make my decisions on my own. And, you know, with having the background that I've had, you know, being in the church years ago and things like that, you know, I can make wise and sound decisions and also, you know, reach out to my friends and things like that. And if I needed to reach out to somebody, a faith-based whatever. So I have different avenues to do that. I think that's cool. It's just, you know, from 1999 to 2019, you know, I've seen and done a lot of things. And, you know, where I'm at right now is where I feel I'm probably the most comfortable with myself. I'm not forcing myself to be in a situation just because it's, you know, what I had to do or what I was forced to do. So, you know, I'm comfortable in my skin and I'm happy about who I am right now. And, you know, I was beyond appreciative of what I've done in the past and all the people that have been involved in the different scenes that I've been in. But right now being, you know, who I am in 2019, like I couldn't be happier.
That's good to hear. I definitely can relate to that a lot. You know, with a lot of the same situations and things like that. So I think that's what I thought was the most refreshing about Bounty Hunter was that, like, it's not very often because, like, a lot of the albums that I listen to are made by kids, so to speak. You know, like made by
Right.
people that are 10 years my junior, you know, or 15 years my junior, and a lot of it, you know, can be just like relationship stuff, or, you know, and I still listen to like tons of Christian bands too, and some of those guys
Sure.
are like super zealous, and a lot of the times I'm like, how are you guys going to feel about that in like 10 years?
Right. And that's one of those things because, I mean, if you, and we'll talk about this when we get to Strive for Justice. And I mean, if it's something you want to do, then, you know, go all the way. And I have no problem with that. It's, you know, that it's something we'll get when we talk, you know, for Strive for Justice. But same as you, I still listen to a lot of Christian bands, you know, like I have no problem with that. The only thing I never have appreciated over the years is, you know, someone telling me what to do because, you know, they feel that this is like, if it's good for them, then it must be good for you. And that's not necessarily the case ever. You know, if you believe this, then you can regenerate someone's leg or something like that. Like, that's just, you know, that doesn't even make medical sense.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, and, you know, and you kind of have to, you know, you can have the entire basis of what that's all about, and you can still believe in that, but also kind of have your own, you know, your own way too, because I think that's the true way that, you know, type of behavior is supposed to be all about. It's having, you know, being rooted in your beliefs, but at the same time being able to, you know, help yourself make those decisions as well, and not, you know, well, because this person told me what to do, it's got to be right. And that's not, you know, that doesn't, how well has that worked out for you? You know,
it has not worked out very well for me. Yeah. Like I get
correct.
it.
You know, so here we go.
Well, let's move on to RTS, which does not stand for real-time strategy.
Which it should, and that would have been fantastic.
You like Command and Conquer. Yeah.
because there are a lot of things in Circle Back that are like, you know, that we do that are either business related or gamer related or something like that. Because it's funny, because what I want to happen eventually is some kid that's like 18 or 19 right now, goes to all the shows, like super cool, like hype kid that, you know, everybody, you know, high fives at the show and stuff like that. When he or she is like, I don't know, mid 30s, and they're, you know, they're like in their career job, and they get on a conference call and someone goes, okay, we're going to circle back to that. They're going to be like, oh my God, that's where they got that from. This is hilarious. And they have like a whole new appreciation for what we're trying to do. So we're dropping these like Easter eggs into our songs and stuff now for people to like realize 10, 15 years from now. So it's, you know, there's a method to the madness. So that's, it's one of those things I just want people to get into. But for RTS itself, it's, we call it Richard II. And it has no historical like significance or anything like that. It just happened to be the second song that our guitar player Richard wrote. So we're like, all right, let's shorten it to RTS. But the lyrics are super, you know, emotional.
Yeah.
This song in particular is about watching someone you know go through a hard time. In this particular instance, it was a mutual friend, I think, of everyone in the band, who was going through like a really tough time. I don't know if everybody in the band knows this particular person. I don't want to say that, but they were going through a really, really tough time. And depression was kind of like, you know, consuming this person, and you can just see what was going on in this person's life. And you, like, it just tore this person down. So, you know, I talk about, you know, come misery, embody your vessel. It's like, this person almost invited this just negative energy into their body, and you could just see that it just changed who they are and what they did and who they are as a person. And it was just like an ugly sight to see. Yeah. So Richard II kind of dealt with, you know, that transition and that type of situation that, you know, that at least I personally witnessed. So, yeah, it's a pretty deep song, and it kind of has that, Zayo type vibe to it. You know, I kind of, you know, they're one of my favorite bands of all time.
They are my favorite band of all time.
So I've played with them, you know, like I've seen them about 100 times. I think I've played with them about 75 times over the years. It kind of had that vibe to it. So I wanted to kind of write like a Dan type of, you know, song to that, you know, because Outcry, I mean, we basically just ripped off Zayo, so that was completely fine. For
sure, yeah.
You know, I'm trying to bring that back, you know, 20 years later. But it kind of had that vibe to it. And once I started getting, you know, once we kind of completed the musical piece of Richard II, I really, you know, felt that vibe and kind of had that feeling that I would have if I was listening to a Zayo song. So I kind of put that energy into it, and Richard II, you know, just had that vibe, and it was a good topic, and, you know, it just came out really well. I really like listening to Richard. I thought initially when we finished Richard II, I was like, okay, it's cool, it's good, it's kind of different than the rest of the songs on the album, but it's one of the ones that I'll go to first every time I pull up Terminus, just because not only is it unique, it's a really cool song. So it kind of mixes in, you know, like some of that like kind of groove metal with a little bit of hardcore. Like it's different, and, you know, I hope everybody takes the time to appreciate that song in particular from the album.
No, I agree. And me being a massive Zayo fan, I've never played with Zayo, but I have seen them so many times. And it's actually funny. They came to my hometown of St. Louis, I guess about a month ago, and
right.
They hadn't been there in 13 years. So every time that I had gone and seen Zayo before that, it had been out of state. So I would drive like 5 or 6 hours just to see them play, you know, whether it be Indianapolis or Nashville or wherever, you know, because I'm like right in the heart of the Midwest, so like I can kind of get anywhere, you know. But
okay, yep. And the one thing they say about people from the Midwest, they just love to travel, which is good.
We do, I do, and
you just jump in the car and go.
It's a lot of fun. It's getting a little bit harder. I just had my 4th kid like a few days ago, so, it's getting harder and harder. But my oldest is 5 years old, so like, I mean, she's only like a couple of years away from going to a Zayo show with me.
Right. And I'll tell you what, they'll probably still be doing it. I think they're the happiest. Not to make this a Zayo podcast, but that's okay.
I'm fine with that.
I think where they're at in their career right now as a band, I think they're the happiest they've ever been because they're not tied down by anything. They're putting out stuff at will that they want to do. They have creative control over it. They're putting it out on, their label that they put together. So like just seeing them not too long ago and talking to the guys, it's always good to catch up with them. They're like, some of the best people ever. And they've always been cool to me, and I really appreciated that over the years. They just seem happy and seem like to be doing the right thing. So they just played, you live in St. Louis, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So they were just there. So you can see it. It's almost like they just have the vibe where they're just a little bit more happy than they've ever been, at least in, the past 10 years.
Totally, man. Like, I remember seeing them like a while back and them just seeming not miserable, but just not really like, sometimes they'd be all on it and other days it's like, oh God, it's just another show like that we have to get through, and all that. But like, yeah, when I saw them, it might've helped a little bit that I bought them like $80 worth of beer and brought it up to them. Before, okay. Yeah, so that helped a lot, I think. But the cool thing is they just seem very happy on stage, very happy with who they are, where they're at, the decisions that they're making. Like, and it's weird too, like me being such a huge metal guy. Like they're about to put out like a remix album,
Right.
And like I'm totally stoked for it. Like, how many bands like them could just do that?
Well, the good thing with them is they're doing things on their own terms. And that's probably why it's making them so happy. Listen, if you want to make, if I was in the band and I was just, okay, let's make a remix album, let's do it. Why not? Because you have creative control. You don't have a label that's, over your back, making you sell, a certain amount of units to kind of stay alive and stay relevant. They're just having a good time. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do with Circle Back as well. For example, like we just got our test presses today for the Terminus vinyl, so we're doing it on our own. We have
how many of those
control.
did you
get? I'm taking a page out of the Zayo playbook now that we're talking about them to kind of like pave our own path.
Sure.
Our CD and tape kind of came out with a label that we know, so that was completely fine. But like kind of forging our own path is kind of, I think, the wave of the future, and a lot of bands are going to start doing.
Absolutely. What's interesting is that, like, with so I had no idea that RTS stood for Richard II, so that's good information for me to have. But yeah, I definitely got a huge Zayo vibe off of the lyrics, especially. And in my playbook, that's like you can't go wrong there, even a little bit.
Exactly. I got to pull from my influence.
What was interesting about this song to me, though, was that like the way I interpreted it was that it's about making a huge mistake in your own life. Like I took it personally because like we've all made mistakes. We've all done things that we wish that we could take back, and that we wish that like in a certain sense, I think like we learn from our mistakes, but in a less positive vein, we also. Sometimes our mistakes become us. Like we start feeling like we're defined by our mistakes. And so like the lyrics, a cut with a serrated edge, bearing the marks of you, the marks of you. Like that really stood out to me as like people that make mistakes tend to kind of wear those mistakes and sometimes they start to feel like they're defined by them. And like based on your explanation, I realize that's not necessarily what the intent was, but that's what I pulled out of it. It brought me a little bit of peace, even though it's not like necessarily a super positive song by any means, but it was definitely, whenever you hear something that you relate to, you kind of, like for me personally, it's the fact that I quit doing music, I was active in music in like 2004, 2006, and then I ended up just like dropping all of that. And it's always something that I've taken to heart and hated about myself that I didn't have the the gumption to keep going or to stick with it or whatever. And so like to hear a song like that, it was incredibly honest. It definitely like that's just what I got out of it. It definitely made me feel like, okay, well, I'm not the only person that does this or takes a personal mistake or what I would consider to be a personal failing and just kind of attaches it to their identity.
No, and you're not far off from really where, I was going with this. Although you found an opportunity to kind of equate it to your life itself.
Right.
The song itself is dealing with, a person that, is being hurt by somebody else. So whether you take it as, and I kind of make the lyrics, in a way where you can kind of make your own interpretation of the song itself.
Sure.
Because although this was about somebody hurting someone else, it could be a situation or a mistake you've made or something that has gone on in your life. You could kind of pull it out and make it, the good thing about this song itself is you can kind of make it your own. And I appreciate that, you found your own interpretation of the song itself.
Yeah, totally. And I try to do that. Like I used to try to find whatever the real reason was, but ultimately I'm dissatisfied with that because the truth is you're John Marino living in another state, living a different life, and I'm Dan Terry living in St. Louis, living my life. So it would be stupid for me to try to like totally understand it from your perspective,
Sure.
And that's and yes, like I think it's cool to have lyrics that are open to interpretation. And, to bring back the Zayo thing just like one last time, their lyrics have always been that way, which is, I think, probably my biggest enjoyment of that band is that I can kind of take what Dan says and apply it to my own life in a way that, maybe it's not what he intended, but I get my own meaning out of it.
And I agree 100%. And that's kind of the thought process with a lot of the lyrics that I do write is I want people to get something out of it, There are a lot of bands, and especially in hardcore, where it's pretty straightforward. I mean, what the lyrics are, what they are, and I kind of want to make, our stuff a little bit more mature. It's kind of what we were talking about before, and have people be able to gain their own interpretation from a lot of the lyrics. So at least you understand where I'm going with, my lyrical mindset when I am, creating, my part of Circle Back.
Sure. Well, let's jump into track 6, The Next Step.
Okay. So The Next Step is a really, really, really personal song for me. This song is dealing with an immediate family member who has a severe mental illness. This member of my family has been in and out of institutions for a period of 30 plus years. So as a family member, dealing with someone that deals with the severity of this type of illness is very, very tough because it's the same story that plays out over and over and over again. Treatment is, the person goes for treatment and then you're back in the same circumstance exactly again. And you keep saying the same things over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really the mental strain that, that's takes a toll on not only people's, the person that's going through, the tough time, which is obviously the worst part about this, but also the family's mental strain as well. And I know there's a lot of organizations out there that help with this, but I kind of wanted to put my experience on paper just to see if anybody, if this hit home for anybody and, maybe help them see them through a tough time when they're in a situation as severe as this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest things that I've dealt with in my life is, having friends and family that are, like somewhat suicidal or drug addicted or something in that vein. And, even I myself have gone through it with depression and how my family had to deal with me in that situation, and it just sucks because you feel completely powerless, when you're trying to help somebody and you think you've made headway. Like, that's the worst feeling. Like, when you think you've made headway only to realize like a day later that you didn't. Like, you're just back to square one again. And like, it is the most defeating feeling that you could have, because you're essentially powerless in the situation.
Right. In this particular, and I agree 100%. In this particular instance, I talk about, your best days are really your worst, but your worst days are really your best.
Right.
And it's the truth in this particular situation, because although you may be in a manic state and you think everything is great and, everything can't go better, you're so far unbalanced at this point that everybody that's, around you or in, caring for you, needs to take you, to seek immediate medical attention, because, and it's tough because the person in this particular instance wants to feel better all the time.
Right.
But if that person stops that, they start feeling better, but ultimately it's worse for them. So it's this weird conundrum, and it's very scary and very, it's very draining. So I've been kind of holding this in for so long, and I needed the opportunity to actually just put this on paper, and I had the opportunity to put it on paper, and it's good to kind of get it out there. And it's also good to know that there are a lot of people that, go through a similar thing. Might not be to this extreme, but know someone who is dealing with maybe an addiction or something like you've talked about. And, hopefully this will help them, kind of see their way through it, or at least, know that there's somebody out there that kind of shares the same experience.
I think sometimes just that feeling of not being alone in a situation is enough for some people. It was for me, and ultimately the way I was able to kind of come out of that situation for myself personally. But even dealing with it with friends and family, it can be so draining. Just so just emotionally, and it's hard too, because like you'll have something going on with somebody else in your life, and you still have to live your life too. It can be really hard whenever that experience just becomes so overwhelming and so consuming of your thoughts and your moods. Yeah, I definitely pulled a lot out of that song. But, you guys definitely ended off pretty strong with a Strive for Justice.
Of course, yeah, Strive for Justice, and this is our drummer Jared's favorite song. So Strive for Justice is really, is what we've been kind of like the theme of what we've been talking about. But this one really, dials in about, if you are going to subscribe to something, or if you were going to go out and, say that I am this type of person, go all the way. I just don't want anybody kind of like, and I apologize for, half-assing it. So if you're going to strive for justice, or if you're going to strive for fill in the blank for whatever you're into, go all the way in. Don't just do it because, you bought a shirt, or or like everybody thinks it's like the cool thing to do now. Like, believe in what you want to believe. Like I have a lot of people I know actually, take this to heart. I do have friends that run animal sanctuaries and friends that, like go out of their way to, start rescues. I'm taking animals for example, just because, it's the first thing that popped to my head. And I know a lot of people that are like really into that type of, movement, and that's completely cool. But it could be really anything, you take your job to the fullest, show up on time and be the best employee that you can be, or, if you're straight edge, then that's like completely fine, like help people out, share the word, talk about the, whatever, that drinking drugs are bad or anything like that. Like, just be like who you are, and also be, go all the way into it, and that's the one thing, I really talk about for Strive for Justice, because there are a lot of times where people just do it just to be cool. And I cannot subscribe to that. And I've seen that for years and years and years, especially in the hardcore scene. It's like, okay, this trend is cool now. Now this trend is cool now. It's like, for me, like I've been down with the metal, like metalcore and hardcore, like, since the early to mid 90s, like,
right.
It's never changed. Like I don't try to fluctuate everything, I will be who I am, and I want to, always like live the lifestyle that, that I live because that's me. And it's not just because, someone is, and again, this is going back to stuff we talked about before, because anybody's told me what to do or this is the way it should be. No, it's because who I am, it's what I believe, and it's what I want to do. And if whatever your thing is, live it out, like be that person, because, I really want someone to like fill in the blank when they're listening to the song, just fill in the blank. It could be anything. I brought up a couple examples. They probably weren't the greatest examples, but I really want the listener to kind of fill in the blank on this. And it's, okay, you will strive for whatever it is or whatever you want to be. But if you're going to do it, my ask for you would be to go out and do it to the fullest extent.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I get what you're saying too, like as far as trendiness goes, because, hardcore, especially, in the 90s, everybody was straight edge. And then everybody was vegan, and then in the early 2000s, everybody was Christian for some reason. And, it was
Right.
one of those things where, like, everything was just, like, jumped on a trend. But, like, those causes are not necessarily bad causes. And they
Not at all.
deserve more than just being a trend that people follow.
Yeah, and that's what scares me about a lot of that stuff, because, there is straight edge is a really, really good thing. Veganism is a even better thing, but the thing is, don't just do it just because your friends are doing it. You need to get behind, if it's really, something that you want to subscribe to, then, do your research, and then, actually help out organizations and things like that. There is nothing wrong with that. I think it's, I just don't want people to go about and like be someone or try to live a lifestyle without, doing the proper research, and then, going out and actually living that lifestyle as it's intended. So,
Totally.
We talked about in the 90s that there was a lot of, like how it just kind of progressed throughout, in hardcore, and it's still the same. We still have the same subsets, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just my ask is, and a lot of people do this. I'm not saying that, like most people that live a certain way are just doing it just because it's cool. I just want to reinforce the fact that please don't ever make anything in your life, just because it's like the cool thing to do. You just need to follow along with that. And that should never be the case. And, this is kind of more geared towards, the younger type mind. I think, you and I are kind of like set in our ways and set in, what we do. We always have, the opportunity to grow and learn and expand our knowledge base as well. But, I just, I really care for the people that we play these shows for, because a lot of them are much younger than me and much younger than some guys in the band. And, like I looked up to some of these bands when I was younger, just for, not necessarily what they were talking about, but like the example that they showed. If they were really, really nice, it was like, okay, I'll always remember like talking to, the guy from, Sick of It All, like, in 1995, he was so nice to me, and it's really, really cool. So it's, setting the example, and then, having somebody to talk to, and also living the, the certain type of lifestyle that you want to be, and not just something that's on your T-shirt or something that, looks cool, on the back of a, of a record or something like that. That's not the intent. The intent is to, be what you want to be, but also go out and live it 100%.
Totally. And like, that's the only way that like you're really going to ever have get any respect from anybody, Sure. I mean, respect's not everything, but like it's definitely, one of the things that I pulled out of this song too was, there's a lyric where you say, I hear what you say, but does your lack of action mean, but what does your lack of action mean at all? And what I pulled out of that too is not just necessarily a hardcore thing, but just like kind of this idea behind like the thoughts and prayers mindset that people have. Like, somebody goes into a mall and guns down 20 people, and everybody's just like immediately like, oh, thoughts and prayers go out, like. And like I understand that we can't just become like our own like law enforcement like militia or whatever and go out and stop bad guys.
That's not
but
the
like,
right way to do that.
No, but like it is still like just saying like, oh, my thoughts and prayers are with these people. Like, are they though? Like, and
right.
And that's what that lyric really stood out to me. Even though, like, I know that the song itself was more geared towards kind of the hardcore scene, or just like the like platforms in general, like people that have any kind of platform. Like, I've got a platform with a podcast, and you've got a platform with a band, you know, and that sort of thing. And like that lyric really like stood out to me as like the bold text lyric of the song was, but what does your lack of action mean at all? And that just, you know, oh my goodness, like it just says it in a way that I couldn't articulate it.
No, and you're exactly right, and that's exactly what I'm talking about in this song, because, you know, words are pretty empty, you know, without action. So, yeah, although we can't help in every situation, we can at least, you know, find ways or ways to aid, you know, like, okay, so, you know, a hurricane comes through. You know, I live on the coast. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Say we get hit by a hurricane, you know, you're somebody in California telling me thoughts and prayers is not going to do anything for me. But if that person, you know, in California was like, okay, maybe I'll donate $10 to the Red Cross, you know, and then, you know, there's a flat of water that gets delivered to a family in need, you know, that's like doing your part, you know. So it's really, you know, putting a little, like, you know, gusto behind, you know, the action itself. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. And again, it's a good example of another song where really you can put your interpretation into it, and you can kind of fill the blanks. And that's exactly, you know, like time and time again is kind of what I'm going for lyrically with Circleback.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I just, you know, and I don't do this too often. Like, I don't give bands like a super amount of praise, because at the end of the day, I'm a music reviewer. You know what I mean? Like, and so whenever I say that this record truly affected me, it really did in a way that I wasn't expecting at all. I just thought, like, well, it might have some good tunes on it, which is why I checked it out, you know. And I think part of it for me was the Outcry connection, because I did,
right.
I really did like Hope for the Torn Heart. You know, I enjoyed the way that record sounded. Like, compared to now, maybe it doesn't sound that great to some people, but like for me, that was like the level of extremity that I needed, you know, at that time. Now, don't misunderstand. I definitely didn't listen to that in '99. Like, by the time that record came out, I was probably, like, the band had probably been broken up for like 5 years.
Okay. Well, it was a good time, and everybody was kind of going for that sound at that point, because they would drop the record in, you know, 97 or 98, Blood and Fire, and it was just like, you know, this is the best thing going, you know. And I was like, you know, young and impressionable, and I was like, I'm going to make my vocals sound the same way.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, because like
I've graduated from that, and now, you know, I have like my own voice and things like that. But it was awesome, and that band was just so much fun. Like I loved being in Outcry. I still love those guys to this day. They're all awesome people doing, like, seriously, like, amazing things right now.
Me too, man. That Not Beneath record, even though it's like a year old now, is oh my god.
Dan was just at my house, like, you know, last month. You know, he brought his wife and the kids down, and we just hung out. You know, because, you know, I see him every time I go home, when I go home to Cleveland. And he actually helped out with Terminus. He did some of the vocal processing on the album itself. So, you know, I try to get, you know, because Dan and I originally started the band, you know, back in 2013 as kind of just a side project. So, you know, I want to make sure he's involved as much as possible, you know, even if it's from a distance. So it was cool to have, you know, a little bit of contribution from him on the record as well.
Totally. And I can hear that a little bit, you know, in some of the ideas presented musically. And I guess where I'm going with all that is, like, a lot of, there's a lot of really popular bands out there now, like bands that are good, you know, because I do truly believe that you can reach a certain level of popularity just by being good, but there are a lot of hype bands out there, and I think sometimes a band like Circleback is going to get lost in the mix. And the entire point of this podcast and the entire point of me having you on was to like really, you know, to dive into the idea of, like, this is music, but it's music that actually means something. And it's music that actually has a purpose. And it's something that, you know, maybe you have to listen to this podcast to get that context. And so I'm really glad that we live, in a day and age where, you can, I can just call you on my laptop and we can talk about it,
Right, and that's fantastic because we did not have these opportunities years ago. I mean, we'd have to go to a radio station or college radio station to, bang on doors to even have the opportunity to do this. So from me to you, Dan, I really appreciate, you at least having this platform and taking the time to speak to me. I mean, my goodness, you had a guy from Korn on last week. So,
right. Well,
having me on this week, like it's, who? John who? Circle what?
It's cool. It's cool though, because
appreciate...
there's a lot of people that listen to our podcast that would never listen to Korn,
True.
So
but I appreciate you having the platform. I really do, and having me on, it really means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And but yeah, man, this was definitely a lot of fun, and I will make sure to post like links to all of your socials and all of that stuff.
And I appreciate that. It seems to be that there's a couple people that have already kind of saw your post and like, oh, I'm going to check it out. And that's what means the most to me. I think that I appreciate that the most. And thank you for doing that. That was really, really cool of you to do that.
Definitely stay in touch, man. We'll do a discography discussion or something here in the future. And
that would be awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. And congratulations on your new edition as well.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah. He's upstairs right now, I think, chilling out. I haven't heard him crying through the whole thing yet. So, that's definitely a good sign. So, all right, man. Well, you have yourself a good night, and like I said, yeah, hit me up anytime, and we'll just chat.
Cool.
So, all right.
Appreciate
have a good
man.
night.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your night.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. And that was my chat with John Marino of Circle Back. It was a long one. I hope you guys made some popcorn before you started listening to it. I know that's what I do whenever I'm listening to podcasts, especially in the car. I just pull over, get some popcorn, and.
Well, you don't have that airbag that has the popcorn that gets heat activated by the oil in your car?
No, I keep telling you that you need to take your car in and have it looked at. But
that's a classic SNL skit. One of my favorites.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I missed it.
That's like early, I think it was like 92, 95 era with like Will Ferrell. Like he gets into a car wreck and they open the car, like Jaws of Life it, and it's just all this like movie popcorn all around him. And he's just like eating it, and it's like shows like a diagram of like the heat from your oil, the heat from your car's engine heats up the popcorn and pops
That's
open
hilarious.
the bag, thus saving you and giving you a treat while you wait for the emergency vehicles to show up.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a very stupid thing. Sometimes I have a really weird frame of reference for stuff, but it's a good time. I actually really enjoyed this chat. Like I said in the intro, it was kind of not what I was expecting at first, especially the way it kind of started off. I was like, oh, here we go. Like, Dan loves this record. Let's talk about it. Let's really get into the meat and potatoes of it all. And then Dan threw me a curveball and was like, well, let's break down the record track by track. Because, you just did this podcast and so forth, and like I said, I think that was a really smart move, and I don't know how far in advance you had that plan, but it almost sounded like you just sprung it on him and yourself, like just like, whoa, let's do this.
If I'm looking through my Facebook Messenger, I think I sprung this on him about 3 hours before we did the podcast. So I was kind of thinking, because I was at work and I was trying to think of like good questions to ask and stuff, and I was like, I found myself retreading too much ground, and I was like, yeah, I don't really want to just do the same interview with him again, because that's number one, that's boring for him, and like Brian would be listening to it like, what the hell, guys? Like, this stuff's already here, like, what did you guys do different that I didn't, And so, yeah, I just wanted to have a little bit of a different angle, and I might do something like that in the future. It's no secret that, a lot of the times when we do these interviews, John is more of the, I don't want to say the mainstream interviewer or anything like that, but like we definitely have our own kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Brand, I guess. So whereas I'm always looking for these like underground hardcore bands to talk about, or maybe they're bands that didn't get that popular that are really old, and that was the interesting thing about this conversation is that like I've been listening to John Marino scream for years. Because he was in another band called Outcry that I listened to whenever I was younger, and his friends in Outcry had started a band called Not Beneath last year that they started it before last year, but I heard them last year, and I became really gaga over their music, and I think we did a discography discussion with them and everything. So like they were friends, and then it's funny, they were the ones, the guys from Not Beneath, they were like, check out Circleback, and then Brian was like, check out Circleback, and I was kind of like, all right, well I've got at least like 10 people now that I respect that are telling me to check this band out. So even though I don't have time, I'm going to take the time. And I'm really glad that I did. But to get back to my original point, I definitely try to quote unquote break bands on the podcast, like get that interview that nobody else has with them. Whereas John's just got a little bit more like experience talking to people that are like bigger names. And so occasionally there's times where I feel like there's what I do, which is a little bit more casual, and John gets to do like the stuff that gets people to actually check out the podcast.
I don't know. It's funny. I think in light of our Head episode, I think the thing with that one, like we had I feel like we've kind of taken a little bit of time off, not dropping as many episodes in such a short amount of time, but I kind of think the nice thing too is like, we came out with episode 200, then we did the Serpents episode, and then we dropped the Head episode, which was pretty big. A lot of people were like, holy shit, like, it's always funny when people who don't, I think, understand what the podcast is, or, I'm not saying Head isn't a really great get, but I think we've had a lot of really great people on the show of varying levels of success and so forth, and some really great episodes. But it's funny, like, that was the one when everyone was like, oh my God, man, like, yeah, your podcast is doing great. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, when it's someone of that level, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, your show must be doing just tremendously because you have someone of that level.
You'd think that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but it's just one of those things where, I kind of wanted to let that episode breathe a little bit because, it's been doing really well. So I just kind of was like, just let this one keep going and see how it does. And then we'll kind of, buy some time for, Dan with his new child and so forth, and kind of slowly get back into the thing, dropping 2 episodes a week, but slowly catching up to all the stuff that we've already had done and in the can. But this was a really great episode. Looking forward to kind of seeing what happens with Circleback. They've been doing some gigs with the dudes in Violent Life, Violent Death.
Yeah, I was going to mention that in the interview. We just didn't get around to it. Man, I took up that guy's whole evening.
Yeah, that's what happens when you start talking about Zayo.
Totally. Oh, dude, we talked about Zayo, I think, even after I turned the recorder off for a while. And then we've been texting about Zayo. Finally, we got onto beer, and we've just been texting back and forth about beer, which, again, is so on brand for us. But I think me and John are gonna get some beer trades going here soon. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm not partaking in the spirits for a little bit here.
You want to get into that? You want to explain why?
Well, I mean, I just turned, the last time we talked, I turned 35, and boy, did I put a good one on. Nice 2-day celebration, and it has nothing to do with why I'm deciding to not drink for about a month and a half, but it's actually just a thing, like I'm going to try to start eliminating some things out of my life that I think, try to get healthier, starting to work out a little bit more, and just seems kind of counterproductive to, drink porters and stouts, which then inevitably turns me into eating late night pizzas and so forth. When you're trying to start eating better. So I just think for a little bit, I know they always say that some of the weight that goes the quickest is once you kind of detox and you lose some of the bloating from like the drinking of beer and so forth. So I'm gonna see if I can't get some easy LBs off my body by just seeing how that goes. And so far, I mean, at this point, it's only been 2 days since my last drink, but it's before that, I think it was about 9 or 10, so just shy of like 2 weeks, and it was one of those things where I just kind of felt a little bit better. I didn't feel as bloated and just kind of whatever. So, and drinking lots of water, but a lot of little changes. So like every week I'm going to try to cut something out. So this week it's starting with booze. And I think the thing, as you get older, you just kind of want to be better. You want to be healthier and so forth. And I think it's something everyone strives to do. I will definitely say that I love beer. I mean, as I'm already in 2 days into the I'm not going to drink until at least November. And then Scott Bowling makes a post about 311 beer. And one of them is the I'll be here a while. It's like an apricot something ale. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. And he goes, oh, I'll send you one. And I was like, yeah. And then I was like, I mean, I probably shouldn't because I'm not going to drink it for a while.
And you're watching me on Skype right now throw back one after another. Yeah, one of these days, man, I'll get around to making good life choices. But for right now, I've just got to make enough money to survive every month. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Speaking of making good life choices, though, let's go ahead and end this episode. Where can everyone find John or Circleback, guys?
Yeah, so you can find Circleback at CirclebackHC on Facebook. They're also on Twitter at CirclebackHC. You can also find their website at www.circlebackHC.com. You can find a copy of the record at circlebackHC.bigcartel.com. And you can also find them on Instagram at instagram.com/circlebackHC. So if you can't get a hold of these guys, it's your fault. It's all your fault.
And if you would like to keep up with everything this podcast, you can find us simply enough at BrewSpeakPod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Find us on Patreon at patreon.com/BrewSpeakPod. Check out our YouTube channel that we were talking about earlier. Sometimes we have video interviews that we do. You can go over there and check those out, like the one we did with Ryan Clark of Demon Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
If you would like to keep up with our show sponsor, you can check out The Bean Bastard over at thebeanbastard.com. Facebook and Instagram are The Bean Bastard. And if you would like to keep up with Metal Nexus, you can find them at metalnexus.net, Facebook at Metal Nexus, Instagram at metal.nexus, and Twitter at metal_nexus. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, we will talk to you all next time.